Hello everyone, and welcome back to Game Easy, Roll Good. And today we're finishing off our discussion about feats in the 2024 Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook. We're ending with the Epic Boon feats. So if you look on any what am I saying? The class tables for your different levels, your level progression as your classes. At level 19, it's going to say Epic Boon feat. And then when you look at the Epic Boons in the book, these were originally in the Dungeon Master's Guide in 2014, but they have now been moved to the Player's Handbook, and it's just something you get at level 19. But it's also worth noting that it is not something that you just get at level 19. These are just unlocked at level 19. So when you get your feat at level 19, you get your first one, and then if you somehow get an extra feat at level 20, you can get a second one. And then if you keep playing beyond level 20, you don't get to level 21 per se, but there's some guidance in the Player's Handbook where, for certain milestones or certain progression after that, you can keep getting Epic Boons if you're doing it like that. So that's worth keeping in mind. And for an example of, how you could possibly get two Epic Boon feats at level 20, because you can get one at 19, you can get one at 20. Let's say, for example, that you have a level, 15 fighter with a level 3 ranger for whatever reason, whatever build you're doing with that. So you get a feat at 16 as well as at level 4. So you take your, you go from level 18 to level 19, you take your 16th level in fighter, you are character level 19, so you get your first epic, you can pick up an Epic Boon feat at that feat choice. And then when you reach level 20, you take your 4th level in the other class, pick up a second Epic Boon feat, and then you have 2. By doing that, of course, you are delaying 2 of your feats or ability score increases, so you have to determine if that power spike is worth it at the end of the game, or if you're doing a level 21 shot, you can structure your feat choices like that, because then you're not really worrying about that awkward period of being sort of minus 2 feats. That's just a possibility that you can do in those situations. So I wanted to bring that up. So let's go ahead and get started. Take a look at what we're working with. Again, starting in alphabetical order, we have the Epic Boon of Combat Prowess. Again, these just require level 19 plus. You gain the following benefits. You get an ability score increase. Increase one of your ability scores by 1. So this is any ability score. You increase it by 1 up to a maximum of 30. So again, the general feats give you a cap of 20, but now you can increase it by 1 above 20 up to 30, because 30 is the cap of ability scores in 5th edition. And secondly, it gives you Peerless Aim that says when you miss with an attack roll, you can hit instead. Once you use this benefit, you can't use it again until the start of your next turn. Until the start of your next turn. That's pretty goofy, right? That's pretty strong. I think if you're someone who's making attack rolls, I don't know how you get better than this. Again, if it was like once per initiative or once per short rest, that's kind of what I would expect. But maybe that's what I would expect just based on my experience with normal feats. But again, this is an Epic Boon, so it should be stronger, and of course it is. I'm going to put this one up at S tier, just because I think even if I'm making a lot of attacks, again, I can only make one of them hit. But if I'm piling a lot of damage onto one hit, either as a rogue or if I'm just any other class that has a lot of, extra damage on the first attack that hits features, I'm going to be picking this one up, no problem. And I kind of joked a while ago when I was talking about these feats with my friend. I was like, what if we did like Dungeons and Dragons New Game Plus, where you start over, either with a different character or the same character, and then you can do the same character with like a different class, but then you keep your Epic Boon feat from the previous game, and you just keep doing that. Like say you do like 1 level per session no matter what, and then you just keep doing that, and you just keep seeing how crazy it gets if you keep piling these things on each other. So if you like that idea, you can go ahead and try that at your table, but I think this is something that I would consider taking first, just based on the strength of not missing at least once per turn. I think that's really good. All right, moving on, we're going on to the Boon of Dimensional Travel. You increase one of your ability scores by 1 up to 30. It gives you Blink Step, so immediately after you take the attack action or the magic action, you can teleport up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space you can see. This one is also crazy. Teleporting 30 feet is really good. Gets you out of, if you're, especially if you're like a caster or a ranged attacker and someone gets up on you, you don't want to be there usually. So, and usually you're going to be either taking the attack action or the magic action. Rarely do we take any other actions in combat. So you're going to get a lot of mileage out of this one. I'm going to put this one right up there in S tier as well. I would consider either of these on any character that I'm using that makes attacks or even takes, cast spells. All right, moving on, we have the Boon of Energy Resistance. Again, we're increasing one ability score of our choice by 1 up to 30. We gain resistances to 2 of the following damage types of our choice, from acid, cold, fire, lightning, necrotic, poison, psychic, radiant, or thunder. Notably, force damage is missing, so I feel like they would have included this if they didn't plan on making force maybe either the least resisted damage type or the only unresisted damage type. We'll have to see how that shakes out in the new monster manual. I don't know if they'll adjust a lot of the other monsters. I don't know. Force is already very rarely resisted, but I think they're using force a lot to overcome, to take place of the old damage from magic weapons, terminology. So I'm thinking that we're going to see a lot less force resistance, even less than there was before. So then it says whenever you finish a long rest, you can change your choices. So you get 2 resistances from that pool, and then if you know you're going against a certain damage type in your next fight, you take a long rest, you choose that damage type and maybe another one that you might expect that you might take. You'll be resistant to that. Lastly, it says energy redirection. When you take damage of one of the types chosen for the energy resistance's benefit, you can take a reaction to redirect damage of the same type toward another creature you can see within 60 feet of yourself that isn't behind total cover. If you do so, the creature must succeed a dexterity saving throw equal DC 8 plus your con modifier plus proficiency, or take damage equal to 2d12 plus your constitution modifier. So it does say you can take the same type toward another creature you can see. When you take damage of the chosen types, you can take another creature. I don't know why it says another creature. It almost feels like it's trying to imply that you don't throw it back at the creature that threw the damage at you, but that's not what it's saying. So I'm not quite sure why it's using that language, but either way, I think one of the problems here is that, especially in a big single target boss encounter, dragons are typically resistant, if not immune, to the damage type that they deal. If you're in a big spellcaster, what do you call it? Like a spellcaster like module where the big bads are all mages of some kind, they're going to have different kinds of damage types. They typically don't have built-in resistances. This might be pretty good. Although in general, I think that third feature I think is kind of weak. Just for the reasons that I stated. It's not bad, but it's not great. But the ability to have 2 floating resistances is very good. I don't think this would be one of the first ones that I pick unless I'm specifically trying to cover certain resistances for a very specific reason. I'm going to put this one... It feels bad to put them low because all of these feats are very good. No matter where I put them on this field, understand that these are all very good and things that are just more powerful than anything we've had access to before at higher levels. I'm going to start with this one on C tier. If I remember to revisit this, I might. Resistances are still good. Maybe we'll put it at B tier. C tier I think might be too critical. All right, let's move on to the Boon of Fate. So the Boon of Fate gives us an ability score increase to any ability score of our choice by 1 up to 30, and it gives us improved fate. When you or another creature within 60 feet of you succeeds on or fails a d20 test, you can roll 2d4 and apply the total rolled as a bonus or a penalty to the d20 roll. Once you use this benefit, you can't use it again until you roll initiative or finish a short or long rest. So that's kind of insane as well. I really, really like this one. I have at least one character right now who's a wizard, who's taken they're a divination wizard, and they've basically taken as many things that they can, as many spells or whatever that they can use to manipulate dice rolls. And so if they were level 19, this is probably the feat or the Epic Boon feat that I would pick up, just because it's another thing I can do in that way. And additionally, it's not just once per rest. You do get it back on a short rest if you don't happen to have it. You do get it back on a long rest if you don't happen to have it, but it also says you can't use it again until you roll initiative. So at the beginning of every combat, you can use this at least once, or you use it once at least, because you can't have more than one use of it. So, once per combat, you're going to add 2d4 to, an ally's roll, or you're going to minus 2d4 from an enemy's roll, either, trying to land an important saving throw, a big hit that hit an ally that, was kind of just on the cusp, and that 2d4 will probably make it miss. This is going to swing a lot of combats in certain ways, so I think this one's very, very good. I'm also going to put this one up in S tier. Arguably, combat prowess is maybe a little more niche. Maybe I'll drop that down to A tier, because it only really affects people who are regularly making attack rolls. But still very good, and it is every round of combat, right? We'll put it at A tier. It's a very, very strong A tier, A plus, S minus. But I think just dimensional travel and fate are just so universal that I feel comfortable putting combat prowess down to A tier. And moving on, we're going to go to the Boon of Fortitude. So this one says we, again, increase an ability score by 1 up to 30. Then gives us fortified health. So your hit point maximum increases by 40. In addition, whenever you regain hit points, you can regain additional hit points equal to your Constitution modifier. Once you've regained these additional hit points, you can't do so again until the start of your next turn. So this is basically a duplication of the tough feat, but they stack, of course, because it's a different name and a completely different feat. So if you have tough as well as the Boon of Fortitude, that's 80 extra health at level. Well, it will be 80 extra health at level 20. It'll be 78 extra health at level 19 when you get this. And then again, whenever you regain any hit points from anywhere, you add your Constitution modifier to that healing. So if an ally heals you, you add your Constitution modifier. If you drink a potion that heals you, you add your Constitution modifier to that healing. So depending on how many sources of healing you have in your party and how readily available healing is, you might get a lot of mileage out of this one. There is a different feat in here that also affects your hit points in one way or another. But I think as far as keeping yourself up for the ability to sustain yourself, I think this one's really good. We're going to put this one at a solid B tier. Energy resistance basically increases your effective health by giving you resistance to certain types of damage. And then the Boon of Fortitude just increases your total effective health by just giving you more hit points and letting you heal more when you heal. So I think these are pretty equivalent, I would say. Next, we're going to the Boon of Irresistible Offense. This one specifically says we can increase our strength or dexterity by 1 up to 30. It has overcome defenses, so the bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage you deal always ignores resistance. And then overwhelming strike, when you roll a 20 on the d20 for an attack roll, so again, only on a natural 20, you can deal extra damage to the target equal to the ability score increased by this feat. The extra damage type is the same as the attacks type. So again, if I'm using a slashing weapon and I crit on a natural 20, I'm then adding, assuming I have at least a 20 in dexterity, then I'm adding 20 to that critical hit damage, which is pretty good, pretty nuts. However, it is only on a natural 20. So, without advantage or anything, that's only 5% of the time that's going to happen. I don't know if that's really worth it. That is kind of niche. I think the only time this really makes sense to take, even over, combat prowess, I would choose this over this currently. But if the only time I would choose this over any of those is if I was really going into the, crit fishing is kind of a meme. Although again, critical hits are fun to do. I like doing that myself. But I would use this only in the situation where I'm using the Elven Accuracy feat to get triple advantage if I have a regular source of advantage. Because then I'm I'm not much more likely, but that's basically the highest chance you can get to roll a natural 20 in this game. So if I was doing that, I might pick this one up just to kind of cheese those critical hits a little bit more. But where do I think this one lies on the tier list here? Again, I think it's below combat prowess, so it's at least B tier. But without those multiple sources of advantage, without that specific playstyle, I don't think it's that good. Even the ignoring resistance to damage, again, my thoughts with the way that the monster manual is going to look like in 2024, or it's probably going to be 2025 when it comes out, is that monsters aren't regularly going to have all three of these resistances on them anymore. You might see pairs of them. You might see just bludgeoning resistance on a creature, but not all three. You might see bludgeoning and slashing or bludgeoning and piercing. I don't think it's going to be regular that we see all three. Maybe on legendary monsters it'll be more common, and ignoring resistance may be better in those circumstances. But I think there's going to be a lot of situations where if you run into bludgeoning resistance, you can just put that weapon away and pull out, a slashing weapon instead and, do full damage that way. So I don't think this might be as useful as it looks. And again, the crit part is very rare. So I'm going to actually put this one down in C tier. I do like it a lot. If I'm playing a crit build that wants to crit and I'm got Elven Accuracy and I can roll triple advantage all the time, I'm going to take it. But outside of that, there's so many things I'm going to choose before it, unfortunately, as fun as it is. Moving on, we have the Boon of Night Spirit. So this one gives us an ability score increase, just like all of them, +1 up to 30. It gives us Merge with Shadows. While in dim light or darkness, we can give ourselves the invisible condition as a bonus action. The condition ends on you immediately after you take an action, bonus action, or reaction. That's interesting. So let's move on real quick. We got shadowy form. While in dim light or darkness, you have resistance to all damage except psychic and radiant. Interesting. So this one is a little underwhelming, to be honest. So they did kind of nerf the Gloomstalker, that it's much harder to get the invisible condition in darkness in the 2024 Player's Handbook. This kind of does that, but it does it worse, much worse, in fact. We can turn invisible in dim light or darkness, which is fine, but it requires our bonus action. Then it immediately ends if you take the action, bonus action, or reaction. And then on top of that, there are the specific actions in the 2024 Player's Handbook for things like study or search. Those are all actual actions now. So if you're trying to, scope out an area, if you're just kind of hanging out in the shadows, staying invisible to kind of, surveil, a conversation that's happening. If you're like, hey, I want to make a perception check, and your DM might be like, okay, make the search action or make the study action, do something like that. So then the moment you take an action, then your invisible condition ends, and then everyone sees where you are. So, assuming that, if you're in darkness, they might still not be able to see you if they don't have dark vision. But there are enough ways that this, I think, conflicts with the existing rules in 2024 that it's not great. I think this is the first one that I feel might be D tier. This would probably be the last one that I'd maybe ever consider taking. Possibly. Depending on what situation your combat takes in, that final one might be pretty cool. If you're in a dim light or dark situation, just having resistance to all damage except psychic or radiant could be very useful, especially if you have a spell like the Shadowy Moil, which gives you dim light around you. That basically just also gives you resistance to all the damage except psychic or radiant. But that's so niche. Again, it's except in those very, very specific scenarios, there's no way I'm choosing this Epic Boon over any of the others, at least as a first pick. Okay, so moving on, we got, let's see, it's going to be the Boon of Skill. Sorry, not Boon of Skill. Well, let's do this one while we're here. Again, ability score increase, +1 to any ability score up to 30. Gives you us all around adept. We gain proficiency in all skills. Lastly, we get expertise. We choose one skill which we lack expertise. We gain expertise in that skill. This one is fine. It would never be a first pick for me, and I think it's not bad to take this one, but I think the people who like to play the Oops All Skills build, you can do this so much earlier than level 19. You don't need to be level 19 to have proficiency in all skills if you want to play like that. Now, if you want to be, hyper max for combat and then take this at level 19 to make up for all the skills you don't have, that's perfectly fine. But I think this kind of stands out as something that the people who want to have all skills and kind of play that character who's the skill junkie, they're gonna do something differently. And secondly, this comes online at level 19. So even though this does give you an expertise, if you're waiting on this feat to have proficiency in all these skills, then you're not having them every level before that. You're not getting opportunities to put expertise in all these other skills before that. So there are ways if you focus on just focusing on skills, that you can get every skill proficiency as well as expertise in like 3/4 of them if you really try to do it. But you can't do that if you take this feat. So this is kind of more of a generalist feat. You know, if I'm going past level 20, I might take this one, you know, 5th. It's not something I'm really going to be going after because there's so many good ones before that. So I feel like I would put this one down in C tier. I definitely think it's better than Night Spirit. You know, having proficiency in all skills is very good, but it's not something that I'd really actively seek. And if I was actively seeking it again, I'd build a character around it without this feat. All right, so we're going to drop back down to the R's. We have Boon of Recovery. Again, +1 to any ability score up to 30. Gives us Last Stand. When you would be reduced to 0 hit points, you can drop to 1 hit point instead, and then you regain a number of hit points equal to half your hit point maximum. Once you use this benefit, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. And lastly, we have Recover Vitality. It says you have a pool of 10 D10s. As a bonus action, you can expend a dice from the pool, roll those dice. Sorry, you can expend dice from the pool. You can spend any number of those dice, roll those dice, and then regain a number of hit points equal to the roll's total. You regain all expended dice when you finish a long rest. So half your hit point maximum. I know you can get up to like 300, maybe even 400 as a barbarian or something like that. So, you know, that's up to, you know, it's probably anywhere from like 100 to 200 health, depending on your character's build. Possibly a little bit less, depending if you're a squishy wizard and you didn't take the tough feat or anything like that. That's pretty significant, although it is, again, you're relying on dropping to 0. That's typically not a situation you want to be in. And what if you get hit by, you know, what if you drop to 0 to something while affected by something that doesn't allow you to regain hit points, and then this doesn't trigger at all, and then you just die, right? Well, I guess you drop to 1 hit point instead, so you're at 1, but you don't gain all your health back. Well, man, how does that work? So I guess I would take, if I'm looking at comparing this to the Boon of Fortitude, which again was like the tough feat, and then we get to add our Constitution modifier to any form of healing that we take. Again, with healing spells being buffed, I think I can get more mileage out of the Boon of Fortitude than I can get out of the Boon of Recovery. Like, this one little stimulus is very good, and having this sort of second wind is nice. But, you know, if I was trying to build a very, you know, hard to kill character, I would take Fortitude first. And then, you know, if I got the second choice, I would take Boon of Recovery, because then the D10s that I'm rolling, I get to add my Constitution modifier to, thanks to the Boon of Fortitude. So that's what I would do. So as much as I do like this one, to play a defensive character, I would take the Boon of Fortitude before it, simply because it amplifies every other source of healing that you can get. And you again, if your party's built around that, just random little spot heals here and there, especially with the healing being buffed. Eating a good berry, now, you know, it's 1 plus your Constitution modifier, so you can really, between combats, get yourself back up after combat. So I'm going to put Recovery down in C tier. I'll say it's a pretty high C tier. I might even consider it definitely over Irresistible Offense or above Skill, but I don't think it's above Fortitude. I would take Fortitude before I would take this one for sure. All right, so let's move on. We got the Boon of Skill. We did that one already. We now have the Boon of Speed. Again, one ability score increases by 1 up to 30. We have Escape Artist. So as a bonus action, we can take the Disengage action, which also ends the grappled condition on us. And lastly, we have Quickness, which increases our speed by 30 feet. This one's all right. I do like increasing your speed by 30 feet is pretty gross. There are a lot of things you can do with, you know, essentially double your movement speed. If you're a monk, it's not going to be quite double, but it's an extra 30 feet. And, you know, with the way that grapples have changed and anything else, any of the other little specialized, you know, tactics or builds that we build around speed are going to want this. And the ability to, you know, take the Disengage as a bonus action and immediately end a grappled by doing that. We don't need to use our action or, you know, wait till the end of our turn to make a saving throw or ability check or whatever it is these days. That's all right. But I think the big savior here is the speed increasing by 30 feet. It is pretty niche. I don't think I would take it first. I'm going to put this one pretty solidly in B tier, maybe even a high mid B tier. Again, I don't think people in Dungeons & Dragons focus on defense so much. So I'll value this over, I mean, it's pretty equal here. I'm not going to worry, again, I'm not going to worry too much about the individual positions on each line, but I think B tier sounds pretty fair for the Boon of Speed. All right, let's see. We got two more here. We got the Boon of Spell Recall. This one I think is a little harder to analyze. So if we take a look at it here, this one gives us an ability score increase to our intelligence, wisdom, or charisma by 1 up to 30. This one also has an additional prerequisite of the spell casting feature. Specifically, it doesn't say packed magic, and you'll see why in a second. So it gives us free casting whenever we spend a spell with a level 1, 2, 3, or 4 level spell slot. We can roll a d4. If the number I roll is the same as the spell slot's level, the slot isn't expended. So warlocks can't use this because by level 19 they have 5th level spell slots. I mean, if you're a multi-class warlock and your pack slots are less than level 5, then technically when you cast your packed magic slots, then you can possibly re-roll these. But if you're just a warlock, if you're just a level 19 warlock, you cannot pick up this feat. However, again, this is hard to analyze because, you know, it is a chance. So it's a 25% chance to get one of your level 4 or less spell slots back whenever you cast them. A lot of the full casters all have ways to get back their spell slots. Like the wizard has arcane recovery. The sorcerer can use sorcerer points to create new spell slots. The druid, I think, do they all get the sort of arcane recovery feature, or is that just limited to the land druid again? Because I know Bard doesn't have a way to restore spell slots. Most druids didn't in 2014, except for the land druid. I don't remember if they gave that feature to everyone or if it's still just the land druid. If it's just a land druid, then a druid might like it. Bard might like it. Half casters, I think, could really use this feat, like paladins. This essentially means like when you smite, you might keep that spell slot, so that's more smites. And it just, you know, you only have 4th through, I think you get 5th level spells, but you know, the vast majority of your spell slots, you can possibly renew them and get more mileage out of them. So I think it's good for them. Shoot though, where do we put this? You know, the one thing I was thinking about is like, is there any 1st through 4th level spell that you can kind of farm if you have downtime? Especially for like a sorcerer who can immediately, you know, start churning through their sorcery points during downtime to restore certain levels of spell slots and casting a certain spell over and over again to kind of cheese something that way. I haven't looked too deep into that. I don't think the sorcerer themselves has anything that they can try to farm during downtime to kind of cheese out this boon. But even as a caster, I think I would take Fate before this one. I would take Dimensional Travel probably before this one. I mean, this might be an A tier. I think I want to value this because having more spell slots throughout the day is pretty good. I mean, at level 19, your 1 through 4 spell slots aren't usually the ones that are saving the day. These are usually your utility slots. But if this does trigger and you get more spell slots, and that is more spell slots that you have to do things like cast shield or cast counterspell or anything like that. So would I call this an A? You know, I am going to put this at A for now. If it turns out if I ever get the chance to play with this and it just doesn't feel as good as I thought it would, maybe I might change my mind. But, and again, if I was doing that thing where it's like Dungeons and Dragons with New Game Plus, where you keep the boon that you had previously, I would probably choose this one first if I was playing a caster, just because starting from level 1 with that boon would be nuts. But in just a normal everyday game where we're just starting at level, or you know, we're getting to level 20 or even stopping at level 20, I don't think I would pick this one, because it's possible that we could finish the game and, you know, I might not see this. I think it's pretty rare that would happen unless you're stopping almost immediately after level 19. But if you're playing for a long time, you know, the longer you play the game, the better this is going to be, I think, because you just get more chances to see it happen. All right, last one, but not least, we have the Boon of Truesight. Very simple one. We get, and again, ability score increase of 1 up to 30 of any ability score. And then we have Truesight out to a range of 60 feet. This is a pretty vanilla boon. Truesight, of course, is very good. You can see through illusions. You can see invisible creatures. You know, it's pretty good. I don't know if it's the first thing I'd take unless I knew I was specifically going to be needing it, given the context of whatever adventure or campaign that I was in. So I think that's going to be a solid. Looking at this table, probably maybe low B tier. Again, it's pretty niche. Truesight is very good. I don't want to discount it on that. But it is only useful in certain situations. It's not going to come up all the time. I'm sorry, all the time. It's not even something like it's not like I can choose between certain senses like I can with like energy resistance, where I can pick certain resistances for certain things. The Boon of Speed gives me speed all the time. Boon of Fortitude gives me bonus healing all the time. Truesight's only helpful when Truesight is relevant, right? But it's still very good. So I feel pretty good looking at this list one more time. Again, Night Spirit I think is very underwhelming. Irresistible Offense. Again, I love critting, but crit just there. If this expanded with your critical range, it would be much better, but it doesn't. It's only on natural 20s. Recovery, again, I think Fortitude is just so much better. Yeah, I feel pretty confident with this. I mean, if you disagree with me, let me know in those comments. Let me know if there's anything that you think would be broken necessarily with the Boon of Spell Recall. If there's any tricks that you found there, that's something I'm interested in finding out. But yeah, let me know what you think of these epic boons. Let me know if you've already played maybe some level 21 shots that let you experiment with these and how that turned out. But otherwise, again, on your way down to those comments, hit that like button. If you liked what you saw and you want to see more, hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.